Hello and welcome back to another episode of How This Indie Dev. In this episode, I get to chat with Dryden Thomas, who goes by the online moniker Lighthoof Dryden. He's got a YouTube channel with, I don't know, 18,000 subscribers, and I first met him because he was a participant in one of the Blackthorn Prod game dev competitions, and I was judging that contest. And so I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. We talk about his game Disinherited and how he took that project from the game dev competition and how he's brought it up into a full-fledged game. He's got 11,000 wish lists now. We talk about going full-time as a game developer. We talk about the vulnerability of putting your heart into one of your game dev projects. We talk about game development as a lifestyle career, also what it's like balancing game development and YouTube devlogs. We talk about creating music for games and a lot more. So buckle up, and I think you're really going to like this conversation. Okay, let me switch into extrovert mode.
I know exactly that feeling.
Extrovert powers activate. Hello and welcome to another episode of How This Indie Dev. Today I'm joined by my guest Dryden Thomas, who is the developer of the game Disinherited, and you also have a thriving YouTube channel. I've been following you since we first met during a Blackthorn Prod game dev competition, which was really cool, and I'm very interested to hear your view on that specifically. But before we jump into that, for people that aren't aware of who you are and what you've been up to, you can just give like a little introduction.
Yeah, for sure. I'm Dryden Thomas. I go by Lighthoof Dryden is my YouTube channel name. And I'm a game developer. I'm working on a Victorian side-scrolling roguelike called Disinherited, where you try to slay death, mostly to spite your father. And lots of platforming, lots of grabbing items, and fun build making and stuff like that. And I used to be a composer. I still am a composer, but I come from the music world and started doing game dev about 3 years ago. And yeah, here I am.
Nice. That's awesome. So did you have much experience before you jumped in 3 years ago in game dev specifically?
Not in game dev specifically. I definitely did some things that transferred over, like music production, definitely helps with stuff like sound design. I did take a sound design class and then sort of wanted to learn a little game dev so I could be a better sound designer potentially, and then potentially turn that into a composing for games thing. But then I fell so in love with game development itself that this little project to practice on took over my life. So
that's awesome. I have such a big respect for sound design now because at the last job that I was working at as a gameplay programmer, we were working on this project that launched pretty recently. It's called Rift of the Necrodancer, and it's kind of like a Guitar Hero, but mixed with a dungeon crawler. So like enemies are coming down the board, and you attack them, and they react differently when you hit them on the beat and stuff. And that's like a very music-centric game. And as part of the development process for that, the studio that I was working at teamed up with Power Up Audio, which is this company that did they did all the sound for the game Tunic. I don't know if you're familiar with that game. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. That's top 5 for me.
Yeah. And so that whole experience just brought my my respect for sound design to a whole new level, because it was like this whole discipline that I just wasn't even aware of, me just like sticking in my programming niche.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. But
there's a lot.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, there's like a lot to sound design, and there's also kind of not a lot to sound design. It's a weird thing. There's a lot of tech, but in the end, it's a lot of just like, does this feel right? It's the effect that it has on you as a listener. Totally. Is the only way you can judge it.
Yeah. I kind of want to start off this competition picking your brain about the Blackthorn Prod competition, because I've been a judge for a couple of those, and it's really interesting being a judge, but I'd like to hear your view as like a participant. And like, I'm sure most people that listen to this are aware, but like Blackthorn Prod, they're coming up on like 600,000 YouTube subscribers. They do a lot of game dev collaborations, and they started doing this this competition where, there was a prize pool of like $5,000 or $10,000, and you'd bring in like 6 different developers, and it was kind of like a weekly elimination process before you get 2 that go to the end, and then you pick the winner. And as a judge, it was like really interesting seeing what progress people made week by week and design decisions and all of that. But yeah, I'd like to hear, like, from your point of view, how did you get swept up into that competition, and like how did it go as far as like ideation and like trying to figure out, like, I don't know, just like in the mind of a competitor, I'm sure it was very different than as a judge.
Yeah, so I I got asked to be a part of the competition about 2 days before it started.
Nice.
So I had done one other pass of the game with Blackthorn, and I think also the 100 Devs project was before that, but
Oh, yeah.
neither of those had come out yet. And so they just asked me to be a part, and I was like, yeah, sure, definitely. That sounds huge and very scary, but huge. And of the people in the competition, I think I'd been doing it for the least amount of time, and I was the least established on YouTube. And I basically thought, well, I'm here as a sacrificial lamb. I'm gonna be out in the first. So if I get any further than that, then that's gonna be a win for me.
That's funny.
But it didn't give me a lot of time to think or overanalyze. The kind of the second the thing started, I was pretty much up all night. I had this whole nightmare where it was like a different theme, and then I like made this entire game in my dream based on that theme.
Oh no.
And it was totally the opposite of what it actually was.
That's funny. Wow.
But then when you get the theme, it was Memento Mori. It was just immediately like you just kind of have to go with whatever your gut impulse is, and also based on like what you can make. So I'd been working on this Metroidvania for a couple of years called Lighthoof, so I was really good with like platforming mechanics and enemy AI and things like that. But I wanted to do something a little bit different than that as well. And so this roguelike structure kind of emerged, and I just kind of had to go. Like, you get a main character, you give them some stuff to do, you have obstacles and goals, and that's all you can have time for in a game of jam of that length.
Yeah, it's really interesting because the way you described it, I think, encapsulates a perfect description of a skill that is core to like a game jam or a short competition that you don't always think about in terms of like skills that a game developer should have, but being able to accurately scope based off of your skill set, something that you can accomplish within like a week. You might only have 1 week because you might get eliminated, after the first week. And so you're but also trying to give it enough legs that you can give, 3 or 4 weeks to it, or, ultimately more if you continue working on it after the competition. And as a judge, I've seen in numerous competitions, developers come in and they usually, a lot of devs will overscope and they will pick something that they bite off too much more than they can chew, and they can't polish to the point where it feels like a cohesive project. But I've seen other people too where they go like a really safe and simple route, and then we're like, if we pass you along to the next week of judging, I don't know what you're going to add on to this, to like make it more compelling. And so I think that's something that stuck out with your project specifically, is that I feel like you had such a good core game loop from the very beginning, and then you just kept adding really good stuff as time went on. And even since then, with your following your devlogs and stuff.
Thank you. That means a lot to hear. I really, just in general, I think that was the second or third one that you had judged. I can't remember.
I think it was second. Yeah.
Second, okay. I always enjoy the way that you judge and express yourself in those competitions. I feel like you have like a very nice, thoughtful process for how you approach judging, and that I wanted to emulate when I judged.
Yeah. Yeah. It was funny because the first competition that I judged, it was very like, there wasn't a lot of structure for how we were going to judge. It was basically, the idea was we bring on some judges and they vote for who, gets eliminated or who goes on to the next round. And I was like, this was totally new for me. Like, my background is in programming, and I did what I when I developed games, I was used to being told what to make and then I implement it. And since I left my day job and I was making my own games, I was trying to like develop this fledgling skill of game design and how do I make a game fun and thinking about that. But it was like all very new to me. And so when I started judging these competitions, I made a spreadsheet and I was like, okay, how do I judge like what is actually a good and compelling game for this competition? And I made a bunch of categories and I was like rating each one and giving like seeing what their cumulative score was. And I'm like, yeah, these numbers like match up with the subjective feeling that I have when I think about like these games and stuff. And then I think they took that rubric and like continued using it afterwards. But it's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to judge a game.
It's hard, especially because it gets you thinking like almost existentially about what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're like, well, what if my perspective on judging this type of game isn't as strong because I don't have the contextual knowledge of the genre.
Right.
And so I can only fall back on my personal feelings. But if I try to imagine what somebody else who is more versed in the genre would then I'm just projecting my opinions onto that person. Mm-hmm. It gets very freaky and hard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because it's not... Before I was in games, I was building like enterprise websites, like internal and external portals for banks and insurance companies and stuff like that. And it was very much like, here's what you need to build. We build it, and then it's very objective. Like, this is done, it accomplishes a function. But with games, like the utility is fun and enjoyment, or sometimes like evoking some emotion like horror or sadness or, you know, stuff like that. But it's so much more subjective. And so it's just like what actually makes a compelling game is, I think, inherently a subjective enterprise.
Yeah. And even when this was my feeling, but even when I was trying to assign numbers to it to make it more objective, I still felt like, well, this number is just an objective reflection of my subjective experience, and so it's equally arbitrary. There's just another stage of abstraction.
Yep. I've really dived in over the past like year and a half into like spreadsheets and trying to like use that to track a lot of stuff in my life. And one of the things that I made a video about this on my YouTube channel, but I was trying to make a decision about where I wanted to take my career. And I was like, okay, what contributes to like a desirable career? And like, there's obviously like the pay, the money, and then there's like flexibility with my work hours, and then there's like enjoyment, and then room for growth, and how challenging it is, and like the social aspect of like coworkers or collaborating with people, and all these different categories. And I like made it like a numbered rubric, you know, trying to quantify it. And I made a video about this, and there's one person who commented on that video, and I think about this comment all the time. And he just said, you basically just made an objective way to validate what you felt subjectively. And I'm like, yes, that is correct.
What a call out.
Yeah. I felt so exposed. Yeah.
It still tells you something, though. Like, even, like, take tarot cards, for example, right? Mm-hmm. When you play them or when you try to read them, your reading of them is influenced by how you already felt, or your interpretation of somebody else's reading of them, or whatever. So in that way, they're useful even though they're very not objective.
Yeah. Because
they give you just kind of, it's like a mirror to look in at yourself. Yeah. So you can use numbers the same way.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's like what they say is like, if you have to make a decision, flip a coin, and then when it's in the air, you'll like feel what you're hoping for. That kind of thing. Yeah, exactly.
Don't even look. Just what do you want it to be in that moment?
That's funny. So I love that you came into this Blackthorn Prod competition as like feeling like a sacrificial lamb. You know, it's like it actually, when you said that, it made me think of like how you want to buy like the worst house in your neighborhood, you know, because you're surrounded by houses that will elevate, you know, the value of your house. So I'm like, you always want to surround yourself with people that you feel like you can learn from and stuff like that. But you actually went on to do amazingly well and make this incredible project. And was that surprising to you? Were you like what was that whole process of going week to week?
It was very surprising every time I was passed into the next round. In fact, I kind of woke up. So the first time I was just like, "Yay, I won!" Like I got it. I got into the second round. That was my win condition for myself. And then at the end of week two, I was struggling with like some bugs that thankfully didn't create as big of a problem as I thought they were, and I was pushing myself way past my limits, like minimum 12-hour days, maximum a couple of 18s, and it was not great. And so by the time I finally submitted, I was like, I'm going to get eliminated, and that's fine, because I'm ready. I'm ready to be done. I'll keep working on this project, because I was really in love with it by that point. But then, then making it into the finals, I was like, okay, I can do this. I can make it another week. And it was very exciting. It managed to turn into a whole building for a YouTube channel and a project that I'm going to be continuing to completion, and hopefully will do well in the end. So,
do you think, because as a judge, one of the hardest things was seeing how much the contestants were pouring into their projects, like so many sleepless nights and just pushing themselves to their limits, trying to make the best project and game that they're capable of. And it was hard to eliminate people, because sometimes as a judge, I would see the effort that people put in, and I'm like, I like this game better, but I see like the soul behind this developer, and I want to reward that, and like have them like continue to work on it. Do you think that you would have worked at the same capacity if there wasn't like a big cash prize at the end?
Yeah. It really wasn't about the cash prize for me. I mean, obviously that would be nice, sure.
Yeah.
But it was more about, the pressure at least comes from, this is a big stage. Like, I know that at least 500,000 people are going to watch it. And by this time, 1 million people are going to have almost watched it.
Yep.
And I just didn't want to embarrass myself. That was the core driving factor in working as hard as I did, I think.
Yeah.
And also getting to create something that I cared about, like, genuinely. I tried from the very beginning to say, like, I want to make something that aligns with, like, my aesthetic values, like what I like gameplay wise, something that I, regardless of what happens, I would be proud to continue working on and represents me.
Yeah.
So,
did you have any part of you that was thinking about the marketability of the game when you developed it?
I don't. It's hard to remember. I think I was mostly just trying to make something that I would think was fun and interesting, and that represented me artistically and could potentially appeal to the people who were seeing it and also the judges. So I was trying to like triangulate this whole thing to try to find what the center of like the best game would be. But I wasn't necessarily thinking like, oh, how can I design this so that it becomes a hit game or something?
Yeah. It seems dangerous to me as a developer or an artist to create a project that you feel like represents you, because then you are like opening your up to a lot of, you're being vulnerable to a lot of criticism and feedback, especially in a competition, where people are talking about like, oh, these are the things I liked, or these are the things I didn't like. Is that something that tore you up a little bit, or like even in the day since, have you been getting any negative feedback, and is that something that is have you felt like there's a good process that you found for coping with that kind of stuff?
I think that my experience on YouTube has been blessed.
Yeah.
There hasn't been a lot of meanness. Occasionally I will get comments. I guess there's a couple buckets. There's some that are like, they're usually trying to help, but the criticism can be something that either I don't think is very valid, or like, of course it's not done yet, this is in progress, or and that's very rare. That's once every third or fourth devlog there will be something like that. And then there's, there's always, no matter what kind of game you're making, there's always going to be some person who comes in and is like, well, this game is just X with X.
Yeah.
Or this is just a copy of X. And it's like, well, yeah, but that thing that you're referencing is also a copy of X and Y.
Right.
And this is an iterative process to create something unique, even if it may on the surface be related to other things. So
Yeah.
there's kind of like, whenever I get a comment like that, I definitely feel it every single time. I'm not hardened against it, but I go through a little process of like, okay, this person either means well, maybe this person is literally 14 and I should not be getting upset because they are just expressing their little opinion, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But I honestly think it's so rare, and I do feel like I've been very lucky in terms of the people that watch my videos and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember when I started getting some negative comments on my YouTube channel, and I kind of learned to gaslight myself to where I'm like, oh, if I have haters, that means that like I have like a lot of people watching my videos, and that's just kind of the way that I've like, I try not to look at YouTube comments a lot, but even though most of them are positive, but it's still like there's something there that I think is unhealthy for me to be like pouring over.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely can relate to that, although I do read just about every comment just because like it pops up on my phone. Like, what am I going to do? Not read it?
Yeah.
One attitude that I've felt is very helpful, especially because comments can be a place where people just kind of like send you ideas or critiques or something, is when somebody says something, I just go, okay, like I can fix that. Or like an attitude of I am capable of actually changing the problem, which is a double-edged sword because I do feel like confident by that response, but that also just adds to your workload, and so you can get a bit stun-locked into just continual improvements based on the responses.
Yeah. One of probably the most difficult thing that I've found since I quit my day job and started doing game development and YouTube is that there are so many things that I want to do and things that I commit to, but it's so hard for me to allocate my time into the buckets that and prioritize my tasks in a way that I feel accomplished, because I just consistently feel behind on everything that I'm trying to do too much. Do you feel that at all?
Yeah, for sure. YouTube is probably the biggest source of that for me. If I haven't released a video in a week or two, or 2 weeks, I guess, is probably the limit, I start to feel like, the treadmill's getting away from me. I'm so behind, but there's all this other work that you've got to do.
Yeah.
Especially balancing like contracts and progress on the game.
Yeah.
That might not be very devloggable.
Definitely. I felt that especially when I was doing a lot of console porting for my games, because it's like, not only is it boring to talk about, but I can't even show it to you because it's under NDA, and, Xbox or Nintendo's going to get mad at me if I, do that stuff. So that makes it hard. You have some exciting news that you posted about on your channel recently.
Yes. I just recently have become a full-time professional game dev. I've been balancing it with music teaching since I started learning game dev. But I finally reached a point where I was getting enough kind of contract work that I could then just do game dev all the time, which is cool.
That's awesome. Do you, for these different projects, I know you talked about it in that video where you outlined this, but what is your for these projects, do you have like a specific role that you're filling on the team, that you feel like is kind of um, like your specific skill set is, or are you kind of like a Swiss Army, do everything, anything that a game needs to get out the door sort of thing?
It has been a bit Swiss Army. The main one that I'm working on now that I can't talk about, I am doing everything except for the game design.
Oh wow.
They have a prototype. It's pretty cool, small scope game, and they're just like, hey, we need help making a polished, fully bells and whistles on this. And so I'm doing the art for that. I'm doing all the programming and implementation, basically sound and music as well. But I've also been a part of other ones where I was just the programmer or just there to fix bugs and improve the design. One time I was given just whatever you think would make the game better, go ahead and do it. Which is pretty pretty wild prompt.
Dang, that's crazy.
I mean, I had to run it by them, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Just like a come fix this or come improve it guy.
Yeah, well, that's cool. I
Yeah.
love doing that.
That's awesome. Sorry, I had a follow-up to that and it just slipped my mind. I'm still a bit jet lagged from my trip from Iceland. We just got back a couple days ago, and so my sleep schedule is all wonky right now.
The difference is like 7 hours, 6 hours.
Yeah, 7. Yeah. And we went with our 1-year-old, and so she is like all kinds of messed up with her nap schedule and her sleep schedule, and so but it's fun. She did so good traveling. I was very, very impressed. I was a little worried because we went around in a camper van, and I feared the worst, but it was a good trip.
Did you rent a camper van there, or?
Yeah, so that's the sweet thing is we wanted to go to Iceland. It was kind of on our list, and I just reached out to this van company and asked if they would want to do like a YouTube sponsorship. And so that's the exchange. Is we actually got to try 2 different vans. One was like their normal one, and then one was like their luxury one. And I'm gonna be incorporating them as a sponsor for the video of all of the game dev stuff that I did while I was over there. So
that's a perk of being a game dev YouTuber I never would have imagined.
Me neither. Yeah, it was kind of one of those like, hey, it doesn't hurt to ask, and I think it'll be cool because it was just a great experience all around, and I'm excited. I'm sitting on 7 hours of footage to edit down though, so that'll be.
That's the hardest part for me. Sifting through footage is a chore. I don't know how to make it better.
Yeah. What's your what's your tact for doing it now? Do you just like record your screen as you're working, or do you have some sort of like scripting that you're doing for each devlog, or what's your kind of your routine for that?
I found that recording while I was working let me have like a ton of like really long and also heavy storage-wise file sizes that then were a chore to dig through and edit. So now what I do is like Wednesday night or Wednesday afternoon, I'll write a script that's probably about 10 minutes. It depends on all I have to get in there. Just kind of everything I want to say for that devlog. Mm-hmm. And then I will record myself doing the A-roll, just kind of like, hey, talking into the camera, blah, blah, blah. I'll edit that down, see how long that is. Though it doesn't matter, because whatever it is what it is.
Yeah.
And then I'll go back and capture whatever footage needs to illustrate whatever I'm saying in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's gotten faster. It's not as fast as I'd like it to be.
Yeah. I think overall YouTube has been a much bigger time suck than I was ever anticipating. But I'm interested, do you have because when I watch your videos, you seem like you have a really good presence on camera. Is that something that comes naturally to you, or do did you cultivate that somehow? Do you do like public speaking, or like I feel like you do a really good job of just like looking at the camera and articulating your thoughts well. And like I've seen other people on the game dev YouTube sphere that just don't have that sort of presence, I guess.
Thank you. That means a lot. I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily a natural at it. Like my early videos, I'm definitely a lot more kind of and and I have ones before that I didn't even post, where I was still kind of practicing. So it did actually take rehearsal, and I showed it to my friends. Thankfully, I mean, I do have my major in college was actually musical theater, if you can believe
Cool.
that. So I have acting experience, which helps somewhat, but it's kind of different because it's not really acting. Like you're acting, but it's you. So there's like an additional level of vulnerability there that you have to be comfortable with. And then you're doing things like, well, what should my energy level be in any given delivery or recording session? It's something that you kind of get used to and adjust over time, I think.
Yeah. There's been so many times where I put it on my calendar, like, okay, on this day I'm gonna record, this video for my YouTube channel. And the day comes and I'm like, I am just not in a good space to record. Like I can't bring myself to like, I try and elevate, not be somber or like talk slowly, or so if I have like mental fog, or like I just like woke up on the wrong side of the bed, it's hard for me to turn the camera on.
Well, I think a lot of your appeal of your channel, what I find appealing about your channel is it's very calming. Like you just have nice, soft, stable energy and like kind of an everything's going to be okay sort of cadence. And that's really nice. But different people have different appeals to them. Like Wishbone's like funny and sarcastic and sassy, and the Fluffy Potato is very like technical and kind of serious, and he's funny, but it's like it's more to the point, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I think with anybody who's trying to get into the YouTube thing, you've got to figure out like what is it about you that makes your energy appealing or whatever.
Yeah. Is that something that you thought through before starting up your channel, or is that something that you discovered about yourself along the way? Like how would you describe your vibe?
I feel like I go for like I'm enthusiastic because that's authentic to me. I'm very curious and I always want to do more. I try to go like thoughtful, and always give reasons behind what I'm doing, like on an artistic or thematic level. And I feel like that's kind of my home base,
Yeah.
identity wise.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like watching Wishbone's video, it's interesting. I have a call scheduled with him next week, and so we're going to be having a chat like this, and I'm excited about it. But yeah, it's very like flippant and quick cuts and like like kind of irreverent, but like in a very good way. That makes it really fun to watch his videos. And like the thing that, well, yeah. So, but like for your videos, I feel like you have a really good way of putting the viewer in your shoes and integrating them into your thought process. And as a fellow game developer or like aspiring game developer, I think that's very valuable, to where it's like, okay, this is like a feature that I want to work on. Here's kind of how I'm breaking it down in my head and like my next step, and like this is why I want to do it. This is why I'm choosing to do it this way. These are like obstacles that I found, like that sort of a thing I think is very valuable. Whereas with like somebody like Wishbone, I watch his video and I have more behind the scenes knowledge than other people because I've been like in his shoes. And so every time I watch one of his devlogs, I think, man, that must have taken a tremendous amount of effort for like a 3-second bit in this video, And he's just like mentioning it, and I'm like, that's that probably would have taken me like 4 or 5 days, you know, like, and it's just like I think that there is like a value to the authenticity that you bring to your channel. Whereas for somebody like Wishbone, he's extremely entertaining. But he just like quickly glosses over like some of the things that actually take a huge amount of time and effort in game development. I don't know. I'm just trying to articulate it out loud, but those are kind of
Yeah.
my thoughts.
I think the way he does it is really smart, and especially for YouTube, like because I will definitely I'm constantly restraining myself from like going down whatever technical rabbit hole and really explaining how the thing works because it's like my teacher energy. I want to like this thing is actually really cool. Uh, and even in my videos where I do go there, I am restraining myself from going further. And I think it's a lot wiser to make your video fun and just make it appealing and so that anybody can watch it and be like, oh, that I'm having a good time.
Yeah, I can relate to that a lot. Like, I don't do hardly any sort of technical explanations in any of my YouTube videos, but a lot of people ask me about some of that stuff, specifically like some of the procedural generation stuff that I've done in the past. And so I want to put together like some sort of like quick and cheap online course that like can be kind of a technical breakdown and education component to some of the stuff that I'm doing. And I wanted to ask you about that too, because I know you have, you know, you have a history in education and you have this like compulsion to get into the nitty gritty. Is that something that you have thought about at all, doing like either like YouTube tutorials or like putting out like small courses or stuff like that?
It's definitely something that people have suggested to me, and something I might be interested in doing, but I think there's a lot of hidden challenges to doing something like that. Like when you put out a course, you also need to be ready to support that course as you go forward. And with everything that's kind of like on my plate right now, that's a different path.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother thing that could be a full-time job for you, for a person.
Yep.
And I really would like to just make games. So
Yep.
maybe someday that's a thing that could happen. And, you know, the more games I make, the more experience I could put into something like that and make it much better. But right now, I kind of think anything that I would make would be inferior to something that somebody else with more years of experience would make in any given discipline. So
Yeah. When I quit my day job, I had this business plan of like having a three-pronged business where I would make games and sell them. I would build a YouTube channel and I would create online courses. And pretty early on, I was talking to a buddy of mine. He's like, you need to drop online courses like that. You should not give your attention to that because you're not going to be able to do all of that. And I'm like, that's really good advice.
So. Not without 120 hours a week.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Do you see yourself as like, because we occupy this weird space, I think, of making games and also making YouTube videos. And I used to think that there was a really strong tie between those things. And like, maybe there is for your channel, but I found for my channel that there's like a big disconnect between, you know, I don't push a lot of like wish lists to the games that I'm developing when I release a video. And so I've found that they are kind of separate enterprises. Do you see like a tighter connection with your stuff, or is there a reason why you would continue doing YouTube or like only YouTube without, you know, doing like game development? Or would you like to be doing more game development and less YouTube? Or like, do you see yourself continuing moving forward with both long term?
It's a really good question. I think there's a lot of different ways that you can do YouTube, and I have certainly been tempted to go down a route that would be different. Right now, I basically just say YouTube is my like legitimized show and tell for adults. Like,
Yes. Yeah.
I just am there to show what I make. The videos are relatively low production value, and it's just about, sharing the process and inviting people in, and that has been really productive and great for me. But I could definitely be doing more if I was thinking about growing my channel, but I don't want to get too sidetracked with that, because that's theoretically an endless path as well. Yeah. And right now I'm happiest when I'm just kind of neck deep in a problem and trying to solve it in my game. And I want to be spending as much time doing that as humanly possible. So whatever I do on the YouTube side should be with the end goal of enabling that life for me.
Yeah. Okay. I wanna talk about that a little bit, because it's like a really interesting topic, in my opinion, is like game development as a lifestyle career choice. So like, what, you had an interesting job before where you were teaching music and had this like background in all of that, and now you're pivoting into game development and doing contract work and continuing to make your own game and all of this stuff. But what is your thought process and motivation for how you want to work and what you want to work on?
I want to work on the games that are just like raw creativity for me. Like, I want to work on games that I'm passionate about, that tell stories, that have like aesthetics that I care about, and gameplay that I would get addicted to, and I want to be doing that. So that's the lifestyle. Like, I've always been an artist first. I've done songwriting, my own songwriting project, production for other people. I got a little burnt out on production for other people because it was for other people. It was their vision, not mine. I'm really happy when I can be executing my own vision. So the fact that I've been able to do that with Disinherited is just, I feel so lucky, and like I've gotten everything that I wanted, basically. So thrilled with with everything. And
That's
then
awesome.
on YouTube, to have people care about it and comment on it and share their ideas and be excited for it and analyze it and stuff like that. Like that's it. That's everything. I'm happy.
That's awesome. Do you read any books? Do you like to read like fantasy novels, or I just ask because there's this author that I love, Brandon Sanderson. He's pretty famous. Yeah. He had a one of his standalone projects books I actually started it when we went to Iceland, and then I finished it by the time we were done in Iceland. And so I was really into it, but it's called Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. And there's like this very interesting world building setting that takes place, and a compelling plot and all of that stuff. But what's cool is that it highlights two characters that have their own unique sense of art, and they wrestle with this idea of doing art to please themselves versus other people, and then also showing up to do like their job out of like a sense of duty versus like just waiting for their own inner motivation. And there isn't like a great there isn't like a big takeaway where it's like, this is how you should interact with art, but it just made me think about in my own life how I'm embarking on these creative endeavors, and like, how do I balance my own motivation versus like trying to get stuff done and like finished, like tie a knot on them, even if I don't have like the desire to work on it on a particular day, or like, so it's like a really, really interesting and compelling like character inner turmoil for that book that's just been on the top of my mind. But how do you think through that kind of stuff?
For me, and this is not my original insight, this is stuff that I've heard, but motivation or passion tends to burn really bright and then carry you through a certain point, and then when it burns out, you don't have the ability to keep going. And so it's really more about cultivating discipline in the end for something like game development. I think for something like songwriting, which I used to do, passion is kind of enough. You can sit down, you can write a song in an hour or 2 hours, and then you can produce it in another 12 or 24 hours. And then there it is. You have a whole song. But in a game, you're going to be working on it for a long time. Like minimum to get like a small scope game, you're going to be working for a month. To get a big scope game, you might be working for a year or 5 years. And if you don't have a sort of ritual showing up, you are not going to be able to make it to the end of that just based on excitement.
Yeah.
It just won't happen.
Yeah.
I think a lot of this, I've been helped by revisiting when I started teaching again. I was teaching violin, and I started violin at age 3. I switched to viola. I played through high school, and it is the most demanding thing ever. It is still the hardest thing I do at all, is practice and try to work on violin music, because there's so many ways to be wrong. And it is instantaneous and it is punishing. Your finger is off by that much, can't even see it on the camera, and you're suddenly at a totally different pitch. It's terrible. But you show up every day and you practice and you just get better. And you have to do it on days when you don't want to very much. And it's worth it.
Yeah.
That's the end. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. I love that. And I also think, I was thinking through like making games, but then also releasing YouTube videos. I think is like a really interesting balance as a creative, because it allows you to not spend too much like investment in perfecting like a YouTube video, but because you have to constantly be like releasing, you know, it's like, at least, you know, how I do YouTube is, it's not like I'm you know, putting like dozens and dozens of hours into a single video, but it's just like, okay, I need to get something constantly out the door, you know, trying to do monthly uploads at least, and which is not always an easy thing to hit, but I think like having that routine of like, because with a game, you're right, I think you can just spend so much time on it, and you get out of the habit of actually shipping or completing.
Definitely. You just refine. But YouTube, it's like, I set myself a deadline that like Friday at noon is when the devlog goes live, and you better plan for it, or you'll be sad when you're up at 4 a.m. the night before.
Yeah.
I've been there. And don't be too obsessed. It's just a YouTube video.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I tell myself a lot of the time.
Yeah. So like for YouTube videos, you know, deadlines are a super helpful tool. Do you have a deadline for launching Disinherited, or like how do you find yourself getting to the place where you can call your game finished?
That's a mean question. Why'd you ask me that? No, I do have the goal of releasing next year. I'm trying to keep my scope small enough that I can have a good complete thing by then. I'm sure I could lessen the scope even more and have it out in a couple of months if I really wanted to, but I think it's worth it to keep going and make there be all the areas that need to be there, make the narrative strong, and have all the mechanics tight. You know, just so that when it releases, it's like, hey, this is the statement. This isn't an in progress. Oh, here's part of a game. We'll see if we can make it even better. I know that's fine for some roguelikes, especially, to keep tuning, and I'm sure there will be patches after. But I really want it to be like the old days, you know, where you bought the game and it was and it was the game it was gonna be.
Yep.
As much as possible.
Yeah. You don't want to do Disinherited as a service where you're doing all your battle passes and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I think that would complicate things for me. I think that can be okay. I think that can be an okay way to do things, and there are not bad ways to do it. But I don't want to complicate. I'm trying to keep things simple, okay?
Yep. Oh man. So you're sitting around 11,000 wish lists for your game right now? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's
Thank
cool.
you.
Is
I
that
feel very lucky.
yeah, it's a feat that not a lot of developers are able to get to. And so I think that it's a testament to, the quality of your game and the interest in it, which is really cool. I'm interested to hear thoughts on game design because I have this, like, the way that I see it is like you and I kind of come from two different backgrounds. Like I am like a programmer by trade, and I'm trying to learn how to be more creative and integrate art skills into the things I'm working on. And I feel like you have this background in like more classical art, and then and that's why I love game development, because it's kind of the meshing between like math and art, and in a really cool sort of synchronicity, I guess. But something that I have never understood with some artists is like their ability to visualize something in their mind and then make it, like draw it or paint it, or like, and I'm interested how your game design process goes. Do you have this idea in your mind of how Disinherited is supposed to look? And do you face any blockers or obstacles of that process of trying to get what's in here like onto the screen? Or do you feel like is it an exploratory process for you, or is it like you are just trying to like get it out and into reality?
It's very exploratory.
Yeah.
Very, very exploratory. I have often an idea for how I want something to work or look, or a certain color palette, but then I'll sketch it out and I'll get it in and I'll be like, oh, that looks so bad. That's not at all working.
Yeah.
And so you just keep trying, because sometimes it's really inconsistent. Even when you're drawing it, I use an iPad in Procreate. When you're drawing it in there, and then when you put it in the engine with the background, and you're just like, no, no, that wasn't at all it. And then you go back and you maybe take a screenshot of the game, and then you draw it on top of that, and then you have something that actually works.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
it's really, really iterative. I would be especially because with the level design, for example, it's always filtered through this layer of code of procedurally generating the thing. I'm sure you've dealt with this with bridges and docks,
Yeah.
where maybe you have an asset and you're like, oh, I bet this will look good. And then once you put it in, it's like, oh no, that's super clashing because it's in the way of this other asset. It doesn't look right at all.
Yep.
Then you have to figure out a way around that.
And the horrible thing about procedurally generating is like, oh, this is fine like 80% of the time, but then sometimes it's like really not fine. And that's the fun stuff.
Yep. Oh, there shouldn't be three mushrooms right next to each other that all look exactly the same.
Yeah.
Mother Nature would never do this.
Yeah. That's funny.
So there's all kinds of these extra challenges. I think being able to do both sides of things is really helpful in that way too. Mm-hmm. I don't know how I've worked with artists who create the assets and then like I put them into the game, and I'm like, how did you know that this was going to look okay?
Mm-hmm.
How was the pipeline, the end, and then it's to me, and then it looks good?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Everything for me is so integrated.
Yeah. Right. That's so interesting. It's been about a year since you started work on Disinherited, right?
Almost exactly.
Yeah, almost exactly. And how has the design of the game changed since you first started?
Broadly, I think everything has sped up. It's become more varied. Mm-hmm. So initially the game was kind of like slow and like reaction based, like it was about reading the situation and responding to it by like catching the projectile or beating the thing back. Mm-hmm. But like the main character just kept getting more and more agile with more and more abilities and ways to deal with problems, which I think is kind of just what happens when you start adding things. You add things and then you need other ways to deal with it. And so that has been very, very iterative. Actually, yesterday I had the idea to play the original build of the game and then play today's build and just see how different it is. And it would be just a funny reaction sort of thing.
Oh, totally. Are you posting that online?
I probably will.
Yeah,
I haven't done
cool.
it yet.
Yeah.
I just was walking my dogs and came up with the idea, but
That's awesome.
it might be an interesting thing to do.
Totally.
Because it's probably changed in ways I don't even remember because I've just gotten used to it.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Boil the frog style.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. When you're working on a game, what is, because like as a solo dev, it's really interesting because you juggle all of these different skills, but you are doing what most solo devs don't even do, which is like you're doing music too, which is something like even a lot of solo devs that are doing everything themselves, they are like getting like music packs or like sourcing out, like that's kind of a given where it's like, oh, music is like a whole thing in itself that trying to integrate everything is that. But I'm interested, like you obviously enjoy the like the amalgamation of all of the things that you juggle, working in all of these facets. But what comes easiest to you, and what part of the game dev process is most challenging for you?
At this particular moment, I'm finding programming the sort of home, chill, discipline place to be. I think it's really fun to be solving problems. I like get into a really good flow with it really quickly. It's probably the easiest. Art is also something I do passively. I'll be like sitting on the couch watching TV, and that's like my relaxation time. That's probably second place. Somehow, music is still the hardest thing. It's just brutally difficult. I don't know, even with an entire lifetime of experience. Maybe it's because I am like more keenly attuned to like when something is wrong and when I want to fix it. But it's hard. I just like, I'll record the same line hundreds of times sometimes because it just didn't quite hit the way I wanted it to. And there's so much room for failure, basically.
Yeah.
And maybe it's also because I am so close to it
Right.
that I feel like this is the thing I should be best at. That's why I also like push myself really hard on it. And so it can become very difficult from that perspective. Hard to say.
Yeah.
But I really do like the interplay of all of the things. And I think there's something special about spending the time to create each thing, because during that time there's a lot of downtime, like your brain kind of flows freely, and so you make discoveries during the time you spend creating something. And you might connect it to something else. You might be listening to something while you're drawing and you'll go, that's the thing. I think that's the special thing about creating.
Yeah.
Definitely. It's a discovery.
I think I've said this in previous videos or podcasts, but I always think about this quote that I heard from Tom Francis, who's the developer of, he made Gunpoint and Heat Signature and most recently Tactical Breach Wizards. But he's like an awesome developer. But one thing that he posted online once that has always stuck with me is that he said, music is so interesting because it's something that I know nothing about. I don't know. There's a million rules and I don't know what they are, but if any of them are broken, I can tell. And I thought that was so interesting, where like it's so true. Like you can be listening to music and you're like, I don't know why this sounds wrong, or like this is like breaking a rule, but like I know that something is missing here.
Yeah, it's so true, isn't it? People, you don't have to know anything about mixing. You don't have to know anything about harmony. You don't have to know anything about voice leading. But if you hear a parallel fifth where there shouldn't be one. And parallel fifths aren't a hard and fast rule, right? You can, sorry, this is whatever, this is my thing, getting out of control again. If you have a fifth and it moves, sometimes it will sound really jarring. Sometimes it'll sound really right, depending on what style you're in.
Yeah.
If you use one and you're in the wrong style, you're going to go, ah! Like, even somebody who doesn't know is just going to be like, that's a little stanky. And these rules are culturally constructed by us listening to thousands of songs for our entire lives.
Yeah.
And it's like built into us each individually, and everybody kind of has their own internal signature of like what good music is based on our tastes and what we like and what we've been exposed to.
Yeah.
So it's hard.
Yeah, totally. Do you find yourself ever, because as somebody who is putting their work online regularly, do you ever like make space for enjoying the creative process without sharing it? Or do you ever like do you find yourself ever just like drawing because you enjoy drawing, or like doing music by yourself, or like is that something that you ever like want to do, or do you feel like that you are able to scratch that itch through like the different projects that you have going on?
I wish that I was able to do that. There just isn't time right now for me to be able to justify creating stuff just kind of for fun, as much as I wish that there was on a lot of occasions. Because I don't necessarily feel the need to share everything that I have made in my life. I have, dozens and dozens of tracks that I've fully completed that probably will never be shared because I like having them all to myself a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm proud of them. They're there for me. But right now it's like I'm trying to funnel whatever creative impulse I have into like Disinherited, or maybe a YouTube video, or I always have fun when Blackthorn invites me on to do a pass the game or something like that, because then I can like take a break and just, okay, here's an open prompt, create something new.
Yeah.
Go for it. And I love that. That's why I always say yes, even though it takes time. It's like, well, it's an excuse to do something new.
Right.
And I can justify it because it's like good for the channel.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Exactly. Right. That's awesome. Let me think here how I want to phrase this. I hate saying it like, okay, what's your 5-year plan or your 10-year plan? But I do find it's interesting. I have different guests come on and I get to talk with them, and I love to ask like, where do you see yourself going in the future? Like, what are you focused on the present right now, or do you have like some ambition for where your game dev journey will take you in the future?
I think I have the immediate future of like the goal is release Disinherited, have it be as good as possible.
Yeah.
And there it is. Like that's guiding my everyday wake up and what I do. Obviously, I also have to stay alive, so I'm doing whatever work is required to thrive in that sphere and make sure that the people who hire me are really happy, and they are. And then I am like, okay, let's go Disinherited. Nice. I don't necessarily know what things are going to be like after that. I know that releasing a game can often be just the start of the journey. So I'm trying not to be like, wow, well, when I press the send button on Disinherited, press publish, that's it, hands off, because it will not be.
Yeah.
But I'm open to wherever creative impulses or opportunities may take me after that.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
Seems like
How
you've
about
done...
you?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I talked to some people, and, I've talked to people that want to like build up a studio, and like make bigger and better games, and like, but for me, like my goal is, I quit my day job, in anticipation of my daughter being born. And that was like a primary motivating factor, is that I wanted to be able to work on projects that I enjoy and find fulfillment in, but also be able to capture my time in a way that I can set my own hours. And so that way I can, figure out my priorities with, work-life balance and spending time with my family and things of that nature. And so that's kind of where I'm at now, where it's like, I don't, and I talk to some other people and they are like, yeah, I want to like make a mark on the games industry, and have like a magnum opus of, maybe create a new genre, or like, make like an impact on the game design world or something. Or some people are like, I want to make a lot of money, and but for me, like the end goal is just like continuing to do what I'm doing right now. And that's like, I'm just want to like keep doing what I'm doing and get better at it, and just work on things that I find creatively fulfilling, I think. So
amen. Yeah. That's always been my goal ever since high school. I was just like, I want to be able to make a living creating what I want to create. If I can get there, I will be set. I don't need to have these spiraling endless growth goals. That's it. I will be happy.
Yeah. Yep.
So
awesome. Yeah.
I am happy because that's where I'm at, basically, or pretty close.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's like the dream job.
Yeah. Genuinely.
It's cool. I think that's all of the questions that I had for you. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about before we wrap things up?
Something popped up a little bit ago that I was like, oh, we could go down a path about that. Mm-hmm. But I don't think I'm going to remember it. So
yeah, well, no worries.
It's a good length. It's great just talking with you.
Yeah, I know. It's been awesome. It's, I started this podcast entirely selfishly. And it was like, I love learning from people and kind of giving to like commiserate with other people that are in similar boats, but also there's been a lot of people that I've rubbed shoulders with, like us, and where, we just had kind of brief interactions. But it's fun to be able to kind of jump in and get to know people better and kind of like establish a community of developers that are for a lot of us, doing these things, solo. And so it's nice to be able to connect.
Other people who actually get the the depths of our suffering that we take on voluntarily because it's fun.
Yes, fellow masochists.
Yes, exactly. A whole community of masochists.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. Well, Dryden, I really appreciate you coming on here today, giving me some of your time. I'll leave links in the description for your YouTube channel and for people to go wishlist Disinherited. Is there anything else that you want to plug or that I can leave links to?
That's pretty much it. Yeah. Appreciate you so much inviting me on. I've been watching the podcast for a while. Yeah, awesome. Watching because I'm doing it on YouTube.
Yeah.
and so I was like, oh, maybe someday it'll be me.
Nice.
And now it is.
Yeah, I know. And we had a false start where we had one scheduled and then we had to cancel it and then reschedule it. So I'm glad that we finally got to get it going. So
absolutely
awesome. All right, I will see you fairly soon.
Awesome.